in cyber, and cyber is a real domain of power.
Hola, Internet amigos. We're going to talk about Robert David Steele and his alleged, though I presume it is true, death via COVID, which may well be true. Yes, people are dying from a specific version of the flu called COVID, a virus man-made in the Wuhan lab, the first rounds of the biological warfare, World War III, designed to bring down the US dollar and allow the pan-Eurasian superstate to be formed between Russia, China, Israel, and Iran, under the guidance of course, Klaus Schwab in Davos, Bilderberg, and, of course, the ubiquitous City of London and the UK European banking cartels. And what did he bring? What did the chipmunk bring? Admittedly, he kind of said everything that needed to be said, but there was just one problem with what this CIA, Marine, NATO psychological warfare training officer said, which kind of took a big in the punch bowl. Do you remember this on Alex Jones?
This may strike your listeners as way out, but we actually believe that there is a colony on Mars that is populated by children who were kidnapped and sent into space on a 20-year ride, so that once they get to Mars, they have no alternative but to be slaves on the Mars colony.
Psych warfare officer, children being kidnapped, taken to Mars. You think someone's taken a giant in the punch bowl? David Icke style with the lizards? You think? We're going to talk a bit more about him for no more than 20 minutes. I want to sum him up for you. By the time I'm finished with him, you're going to see that he was a turd. Good riddance to him and all the other filth and depravity that come into this issue, not with good intentions. Their best intentions are they want to get some money for whatever reason. Their whoredom, stardom, internet status is wanted. I don't want to be nasty to someone that's dead, but I just can't help myself. And the fools that followed this effing clown, and all you had to do was watch my 3-part series, 50 minutes each episode, Rats in the Ranks, and you would have worked out Robert David Steele in 5 freaking seconds. This guy was ghostwriting for the king of the Cherry Marines, General Al Gray. Remember Kay Griggs? He's the most evil man she's ever met. He's the king and the staff founder of the Marine Psychological Warfare, Marine University, and he's ghostwriting for General Al Gray. It's all on his website. He's totally open about it. Thank you, Susan, for pointing it out, because I never took him seriously after watching one Alex Jones. And I never went, and she said, you do realize he was the NATO Marine Psych Warfare training officer? And I said, I'll get as if. She said, Brandon, I went to his website, I nearly fell over, and that's when I was halfway through Rats in the Ranks, which you must watch. Here is Rats in the Ranks on my other channel. This is part 11. It's 10, 11, and 12. Watch all 3 of them, but 11 and 12 have Robert David Steele, and we're going to watch a section from that. What's very interesting is, before we go on, we're going to read from The Guardian. This is The Guardian. This is Julian Assange's favourite paper. It used to be kind of leftist mild. I didn't mind it at all. Now it's just a raving lunatic. I don't know what the hell happened to it post-2014, but it went completely insane. And it's run by a big sort of leftist, globalist-y, George Soros-funded private, trust. But anyway, so this is actually an article from The Guardian on Robert David Steele from 2014, Thursday, 19th of June, 2014. We're going to read the whole thing. And I want you to listen to the language. The only thing he hasn't come out and praised is Soros and Amartya Etzioni and the communitarian movement, because this is what he was going to be pushing, the communitarian movement, ultimately. Listen to this. The open source revolution is coming, and it will conquer the 1%, ex-CIA spy. The man who trained more than 66 countries in open source methods calls for a reinvention of intelligence to re-engineer the earth. He's in this paper because he fits their profile. And you know what the profile of The Guardian is. That's a George Soros. We all live together in our smart city gulags under communitarian law. And that's exactly what he was. Now listen, do not grieve for this little piece of shit, whose daughter is also head of public relations for the FBI. Robert David Steele, and I swear, I'm sorry, you know, my mother always said, don't speak ill of the dead, but my mother also said something else. She said, Brendan, people are always splendid when they're dead. He was a piece of shit. Okay, I don't care that he's dead. He's a piece of garbage. I cannot reiterate that enough. Watch my video, Rats in the Ranks will show an extract, and you will see why. You will see why. Let me just shut down my email, because I don't want it appearing in the top right. Robert David Steele, former Marine CIA case officer and U.S. co-founder of the United States Marine Corps intelligence activity, is a man on a mission. But it's a mission that frightens the U.S. intelligence establishment to its core. With 18 years' experience working across the U.S. intelligence community, followed by 20 more years in commercial intelligence and training. Denology, because he knows General Jim Jones and Roger Stone. NATO, Marine Psych Warfare, that's Robert David Steele, the man you're grieving, who then took a big shit in the punch bowl of child sex assault and child trafficking by saying they were being kidnapped and taken to Mars. You still haven't got it, have you? Of course, my regulars, you all got it. That's why you come. So he's in commercial intelligence and training. Of course he wants open source, because Rothschild's private East India Trading Company wants it too. He doesn't care that he gets mentioned. There's already people mentioning and going after Rothschild all over the place. But he hooked you in and then fed you shit for how many years? Commercial intelligence, maybe denology. We could have asked him, but he's with Cynthia McKinney, the virtual communist, someone I absolutely adored. Cynthia McKinney, I was invited to Bangladesh to help her out, and then she disappeared and she was hanging with Robert David Steele. Steele's exemplary career has spanned almost all areas of both the clandestine world. Since when does The Guardian praise these sorts of people? Well, you'll find out why. Steele started off as a Marine Corps infantry and intelligence officer. After 4 years on active duty, he joined the CIA for about a decade before co-founding the Marine Corps intelligence activity, where he was deputy director. This guy is not the janitor. Widely recognized as the leader of the open source intelligence paradigm, OSINT, Steele went on to write the handbooks on OSINT for NATO, the US Defense Intelligence Agency, and the US Special Operations Forces. In passing, he personally trained 7,500 officers from over 66 countries. In 1992, despite opposition from the CIA, he obtained Marine Corps permission to organize a landmark international conference on open source intelligence, the paradigm of deriving information to support policy decisions not through secret activities, but from open public resources available to all. The conference was such a success, it brought in over 620 attendees from the intelligence world. Now, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think it's a great idea. So does Dominic Cummings. We've got a bunch of Yale graduate morons who've never been in the real world a day in their life are going to give us intelligence. I already own the biggest espionage case in history. Supposedly I'm a genius because what? They didn't have Google or YouTube? It's all open source. As Detective Justin Robinson said, it's all open source, isn't it, Brennan? I said, yes, Justin, it's all open source. It's right in front of your eyes. You just connect the dots. And now you have these private, highly decentralized companies like Bellingcat, where they got people in wheelchairs, little old ladies. It's a pretty good idea, actually, doing all sorts of work, all sorts of investigative work. Many of them are volunteers, but these private little decentralized operations, of course, are all linked in with companies like Denology. And that is the point. I'm going to kill those fucking dogs. So Bellingcat, very, very interesting. Put a couple of links. You can go look them up yourself. These are all linked, but they do not operate in isolation. They are intimately linked in with private companies like Denology. Thank you, Patrick Berge and Shadowgate, Millie Weaver and Gavin Wentz. Gavin Wentz actually worked for Lockheed. How interesting, Lockheed Fusion Centers. In 1992, despite opposition from we've already read that bit. But the CIA wasn't happy and ensured that Steele was prohibited from running a second conference. The clash prompted him to resign from his position as second-ranking civilian in Marine Corps intelligence and pursue the open source paradigm elsewhere. He went on to found head up the Open Source Solutions Network Inc. and later the non-profit Earth Intelligence Networks, which runs the Public Intelligence blog. Funny that a guy, you'd think he'd want to talk to me. Before I got onto him, I'm talking to Cynthia McKinney. She's inviting me to Bangladesh. All of a sudden she disappears. 2 years later she turns up stating that I have a body of work to be proud of. But let me assure you, Robert David Steele's never tried to contact me, ever. Funny that. And this is before I even got onto him. Because that, of course, we know what he is, and he know I'd see his bullshit in about 3 seconds. So, which is why. So the Public Intelligence blog, his rhetoric is pure George Soros. I first came across Steele when I discovered his Amazon review of my third book, The War on Truth, 9/11 Disinformation and the Anatomy of Terrorism. A voracious reader, Steele is the #1 Amazon reviewer for non-fiction across 98 categories. You sure that's not Bellingcat in his name? He also reviewed my latest book, A User's Guide to the Crisis of Civilization, but told me I'd overlooked an important early work, A More Secure World, Our Shared Responsibility, Report of the UN High-Level Panel on Threats, Challenges and Change. He's a big fan of the UN. Last month, Steele presented a startling paper at the LibTech conference in New York, sponsored by the Internet Society and Reclaim, drawing on principles set out in his latest book, quote, The Open Source Everything Manifesto, Transparency, Truth and Trust. He told the audience that all the major preconditions for revolution set out in his 1976 graduate thesis were now present in the United States and Britain. And who better to send into the denology world, private intelligence world that's operating today under the East India Trading Company, who better to send out into the world to take giant hits in punch bowls of truth on very important subjects than Robert David Steele? And it gets worse, and I'll show you him and Rats in the Ranks in my video very soon, assuming that stays up, because it got another community guideline strike. That's my backup channel just all of a sudden last night. Almost like they knew I was about to do this on Robert Steele. Steele's book is a must-read, a powerful yet still pragmatic road back to a new civilizational paradigm that simultaneously offers a trenchant, unrelenting critique of the prevailing global order. His interdisciplinary whole systems approach dramatically connects up the increasing corruption, inefficiency, and unaccountability of the intelligence system and its political and financial masses with escalating inequalities and environmental crises. Yeah, but he also offers a comprehensive vision of hope that activist networks like Reclaim are implementing today. We're at the end of a 5,000-year plus historical process, this is Steele talking now, during which human society grew in scale while it abandoned the early indigenous wisdom councils. He's got all the lingo. Greta will be proud. The early indigenous wisdom councils. Oh, you feel all warm and fuzzy. And communal decision-making. He writes in the Open Source Everything Manifesto. Power was centralized in the hands of increasingly specialized elites and experts who not only failed to achieve all they promised, but used secrecy and the control of information to deceive the public into allowing them to retain power over community resources that they ultimately looted. Well, who can complain with that? If we get the wisdom, I don't know, how about a communitarian Secretary General of your Gulag new Chicago Smart City 33 like Amitai Tiani? I'm sure he'll have a commune or two ready to go. Hey, Robert? I mean, look, it all sounds good. I'm all for it. You're talking to Mr. Kibbutz permaculture farm guy. Drop out. Trust me. Today's capitalism, he argues, that's the scary thing about communitarianism. It's so damn good, and he's a big lover of it. Today's capitalism, he argues, is inherently predatory and destructive. Quote, over the course of the last centuries, the commons was fenced and everything from agriculture to water was commoditized without regard to the true cost in non-renewable resources. Human beings who had spent centuries evolving away from slavery were re-commoditized by the industrial era. That is straight out of what's-his-face. Oh, God, I've forgotten his name. I got his documentary years ago. Oh, damn. Okay, I'm not going to worry about it, but there's a guy, he was very well known in the 80s and 90s, doing this thing on the commons and how to fix it. Open source everything in this context offers us the chance to build on what we've learned through industrialization, to learn from our mistakes and catalyze the reopening of the commons, in the process breaking the grip of defunct power structures and enabling the possibility of prosperity for all. Yeah, it's called communism, and it never quite works out, does it? Because that's exactly what they're talking about. Sharing, not secrecy. Oh my God, give me a warm fuzzy teddy bear. Sharing, not secrecy, is the means by which we realize such a lofty destiny, as well as create infinite wealth. The wealth of networks, the wealth of knowledge, revolutionary wealth. Or we can create a non-zero, win-win earth that works for 100% of humanity. Comrade, tell me more. This is the utopia that Bookmaster Fuller foresaw, now within our reach. Oh my God, get me Noam Chomsky immediately. Someone call Howard Zinn and all the usual suspects. This is gold. Gold, ladies and gentlemen. But good. I love this stuff. But then there's reality, where we all must live. Not George Soros bullshit land. And finally, concentrated, illicitly aggregated and largely Feltham wealth in favour of community wealth defined by community knowledge, community sharing of information and community definition of truth derived in transparency and authenticity, the latter being the ultimate arbiter of shared wealth. Comrade, get me my French deconstructionist of the dialectic immediately, and my Trotsky glasses. Somebody get me some Trotsky glasses, please. That's not a 666. I used to be into this shit in my 20s, and I grew out of it. But clearly, Robert David Steele hasn't grown out of it yet. Yes, so we've got the capitalist, which isn't capitalist, it's socialism for the rich, free markets for the poor. Just the rich shits, banking cartels doing their business, and then the banking cartels prop up an idiot like Soros and an idiot like Robert David Steele to feed you the solution. We'll all live in the commons in our little smart city gulags. Robert Steele knew all the work I'd done, watched every single video, never said a word. There's a reason for that. Protected Russia, defended Russia, never told you about the multipolar world order, which is unfolding today. And as I watch, and I've got to finish this video eventually on the grand strategy, grand chessboard unfolding in Eurasia and Afghanistan, we find that now China's saying we must all get together and they're negotiating with the Biden administration to ensure the smooth running of Afghanistan and, of course, the giant Belt and Road project, the Rothschild Pan-Eurasian superstate, which ironically, numbnuts, the clown prince, Donald Trump actually was putting a spanner or two in. And, well, here we are today with Robert David Steele. When he's not quoting Martian space theories of child sex, kidnapping and trafficking plots, he's here giving you a beautiful George Soros-inspired vision of the world. Now get this bit. Oh, I love this. Despite this unabashedly radical vision, just a bit, Steele is hugely respected by senior military intelligence experts across the world. I'm sure you are, all the woke ones. As a researcher at the U.S. Army War College's Strategic Studies Institute, he has authored several monographs advocating the need for open source methods to transform the craft of intelligence. He has lectured to the U.S. State Department and Department of Homeland Security, as well as national security councils in various countries, and his new book has received accolades from senior intelligence officials across multiple countries, including France and Turkey. Yet he remains an outspoken critic of U.S. intelligence practices. Of course he's an outspoken critic. I wonder if he's going to talk about, Russian intelligence practices. With all his knowledge, that little fat, chipmunk-cheeked, unfit, diabetic, asking for a COVID virus, he sat there and told you nothing about Alexander Dugin and the unfolding of the multipolar world order, did he? Did he tell you about Zarif and Rouhani at Davos every 5 minutes, hanging with their friends, scoffing all the chocolate eclairs? That's what I heard about Zarif, who's I stayed with friends of his family. And did he tell you about Rouhani 6 years in Scotland, hanging with Jack Straw? They defended Iran under Rouhani. They defended Russia. They did everything they could. Why? It's just like a Whitney Webb. He's defending Whitney Webb and sending his little offside of George Webb. George Webb might want to watch out, to protect Whitney Webb. The James Corbetts of this world, the last American vagabond, all the same rhetoric. This is a George Soros little hangout. That's what it is. Maybe Fred Smith was in there too. I don't know. I hear Fred Smith's seen the light. Like really seen the light. I hope so. I hope our Bronze Star Favela, Silver Star, former Marine remembers, being a Marine and his oath to the Constitution of the United States. By the time I'm finished, this has all got to be done properly, obviously, but you'll get it. You're going to get all this. You will get. Do you know how many people I have now? Coming to my Patreon and going, oh my God, you opened my eyes. I believed all these clowns. It was so obvious. It was sitting right in front of my face. I watched Rats in the Ranks. I watched this. I watched Video 5. These people are not hard to see through. Unfortunately, a lot of the people, they're old hands. They can't video edit. They don't want to put their faces online. They're the ones that guide me. If Susan hadn't mentioned that clown, who he was, I would not have gone back to his website and checked him out. I just didn't even bother to look because I just laughed at him. Big mistake. I would have been onto that 2 years earlier. This week, I had the good fortune of being able to touch base with Steele to dig deeper into his recent analysis of the future of US politics in the context of our accelerating environmental challenges. This is straight out of a George Soros playbook. I'm waiting for Greta to turn up. This is 2014. The first thing I asked him was where he sees things going over the next decade, given his holistic take. Oh, holistic take. You understand, people? I like this stuff too. I don't want to breathe in pollution. I want to live in a big city and have a farm too, but live in a big city and go to cafes, which I love, and pluck fruit from our beautiful Israeli drip-fed, organic, filled with filled with all these beautiful minerals taken up into these beautiful fruit and vegetables. Just pluck it off the side of the road and eat it raw. Electric cars, no pollution. You don't think I want that? I want all this stuff. That's the seduction that even the elect will be deceived. And this little clown is a Pied Piper leading you down the garden path. And every bit of word and rhetoric in this article is straight out of a Soros handbook, UN handbook. Quote, properly educated people always appreciate holistic approaches to any challenge. This means that they understand both cause and effect and intertwined complexities, he said. A major part of our problem in the public policy arena is the decline in intelligence with integrity among key politicians and staff at the same time that think tanks and universities and non-governmental organisations have also suffered a similar intellectual diminishment. There's a severe similar intellectual diminishment? What, like this, Robert?
There is a colony on Mars that is populated by children who were kidnapped and sent into space on a 20-year ride.
Like when some fucking idiot tells you that they're kidnapping children and taking them to Mars as sex slaves? No, people, he's not doing it to protect himself because it's the only way to protect him because he's so high up on the ladder. Brendan O'Connell's been insulting Nasrallah from Beirut. I've been arguing with, calling him all sorts of nasty names at the airport in Tehran and writing nasty emails from the friends of the Foreign Minister Zarif, and I'm still here, baby. I'm still here. Don't give me that horse shit. I've had the Israeli state coming against me personally, exposed the biggest espionage case in history. You heard about Unit 8200 and the Telpiot program from our group first, and we've been ignored and debased for 4 solid years. So this clown and that fucking bitch, commie, Bangladesh, home of a major communist movement in Bangladesh, have sat there and lied through their teeth to you. She happened to link one Twitter post out of sheer guilt. Despite privately contacting me and saying you have a body of work to be proud of, you seriously take any of these people seriously? This is sad, ladies and gentlemen. This is the internet now. This is the internet. Childish Gambino. This is America. Well, this is the internet. It's a fucking sewer of shit. Of shit. They're drinking adrenochrome. Oh, we'll get onto that one. The blood-drinking satanic pedophiles. And the judge, or the former judge and the lawyer he had on with him, Sir John Walsh, my lawyer in my appeal, forced on me, who got up in the Supreme Court of Western Australia in 2012 and said, I think he's learned his lesson. Was it 2011? Late. I think he's learned his lesson. John Walsh, who's hanging out. And you know, Walsh is a very high-level Mason. He helped set up the Hutt River province with Prince Leonard, which is a real, like Monaco, like the Vatican, it's a real province. Hardcore. It's properly done. High-level Mason, he was. It wasn't like I disliked John Walsh as a human being, but he fucked me around. He's got a major alcohol problem. Big time. And everyone around him was a Mason, including former military intelligence reserve Neil Russell Taylor, who visits me in Acacia Prison, and he's chatting with Bill Bosch, former member of South African intelligence, saying, Brendan, just go in with Tony and the lads, Trico, in self-care. You'll be looked after. That's what he said. As I'm going, what's happening with the appeal? Oh, it's okay, you'll be looked after. What, because they were the guys dealing all the ecstasy and meth in the prison? Seriously, you have no idea what went on. I still haven't got through it. And Bill Bosch, head of security at Acacia, I got rid of him. And then they transferred me to maximum security management unit where I got to be good friends with the rock machine. They actually tried to recruit me. I was teaching them counter surveillance and and encryption. I kid you not. You don't know the half of it. I said, well, if you're going to put me in jail, I'm going to teach these boys how to encrypt properly and all your backdoors and all the things you do and how to do it on a printed piece of paper and post it, then scan it into a Word document and blah, blah, blah. And you're never going to read a damn thing they do. I'm like, I said, well, don't put me in jail. Simple as that. You don't know the half of it. Anyway, getting back to Robert David Steele, the man who's worried about intellectual diminishment while telling you children are being kidnapped and taken to Mars as sex slaves. Yes, of course. My early graduate education was in the 70s when limits to growth and world federalism were the rage. Both sought to achieve an overview of systemic challenges, but both also suffered from the myth of top-down hubris. What was clear in the 70s has been obscured by political and financial treason in the past half-century, in that everything is connected. What we do in the way of paving our wetlands or in poisoning groundwater inadvertently causes, because of our reliance on pesticides and fertilizers that are not subject to integrity of the precautionary principle, ultimately leads to climate catastrophes. that are acts of man, not acts of God, should we go back to that? Ultimately leads to climate catastrophes. Greta?
How dare you!
Oh my God, it's a Soros talking point. Look, and again, I want a healthy world too. But they're gonna ruin it, and then they're gonna bring in these ideologies to control you into the smart cities program, into the gulag, into communitarian law. And trust me, when it says in the Bible, the book of Revelation, even the elect will be deceived, if that were possible, by the new system to come. It's communitarian law. It's Amatoi Etzioni, aka Werner Falk, German Jew, existentialist, just like Henry Kissinger, out of Germany, went into the Israeli Defense Force. Kissinger went into British intelligence, and now they're all over in America teaching Americans and the Mod Squad. Wait for the links between the Mod Squad, AOC and Co, and Amatoi Etzioni, aka Werner Falk. You just wait. You just wait, Henry Higgins. Every reading you take of Robert David Steele is like a freaking Soros talking point. There's no relationship here. This is pure ideology. This is as if Trotsky is writing this himself just before the revolution, 1917. It's all beautiful intellectual twaddle, but how do you actualize it in the real world? But you're not meant to. It's meant to come top down. He keeps talking about grassroots. This will never come grassroots. It's all going to come top down via the communitarian UN Smart City Habitat Program. This is out of the UN Habitat Smart Cities Program. I may as well be reading Agenda 2020 or Agenda 2030 as watch Robert David Steele. I assure you. He's even got peak oil in here. Wow, Michael Rupert, eat your heart out. He points to me his tremendous collection of reviews of books on climate change, disease, environmental degradation, peak oil and water scarcity. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is straight out of the report from Iron Mountain, where they said we'll use environmental catastrophe, we'll use war, we'll even have alien sightings or alien invasions. Oh my God, it's unfolding before us. And Robert David Steele was right in there amongst it. I see 5 major overlapping threats on the immediate horizon, he continues. They are all related: the collapse of complex societies, the acceleration of the Earth's demise with changes that used to take 10,000 years now taking 3 or less, predatory or shock capitalism and financial crime out of the City of London and Wall Street, and political corruption at a scale to include the West supporting 42 or 44 dictators. We are close to multiple mass catastrophes. Of course we are, sweetheart, and your friends at the City of London will provide the solution. What about the claim that the US is on the brink of revolution? Revolution is overthrow, the complete reversal of the status quo. We are at the end of centuries of what Lionel Tiger calls, quote, the manufacture of evil, in which merchant banks, led by the City of London, oh, he's got all the key talking points here, have conspired with captive governments to concentrate wealth and commoditize everything, including humans. What revolution means in practical terms is that balance has been lost and the status quo ante is unsustainable. There are 2 stops on greed to the nth degree. The first is the carrying capacity of the earth. Thank you, Greta.
How dare you!
And the second is human sensibility. We're now at a point where both stops are activating. It's just not the US he has. The preconditions of revolution exist in the UK and most Western countries. Blah, 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 blah. All right, so here we go. You can pause and read that. I'll go through and you can pause and read it. And an end to capitalism, of course, brother. That's the way. He goes into all the wonderful George Soros open society stuff. And sent a letter to 1st of May, Steele sent an open letter to US Vice President Joe Biden requesting him to consider establishing an open source agency that would transform the operation of the intelligence community, dramatically reduce costs, increasing oversight and accountability, while increasing access to the best possible information to support holistic policy making. To date, he has received no response. I agree with all of this. I agree with it all. But I also live in the real world. Because you have a bunch of other countries who would also like the US to open source everything. And they ain't opening up. And Russia and China and others are not becoming beautiful, liberal, free-flowing, transformational ideas. None of that's happened in those countries. They're concentrating power. And then the same people in the US are handing them all this technology. Robert David Steele, instead of his stupid unrigged bullshit, which you paid for, and they got a whole bus and all sorts of stuff on it, could have been doing one on Israel and high technology. They knew all about it, baby. They knew all about it. They did nothing. They said nothing. And then they suddenly turn up and they've discovered the issue. When are you going to work it out? Okay. Look, I'm not particularly surprised. Open source everything pretty much undermines everything the national security state stands for. Why bother even asking a vice president to consider it? The national security state is rooted in secrecy as a means of avoiding accountability. Well, not necessarily just accountability. It's called you keep building up enemies who want to take you down, and then you've got to be secret. My first book, On Intelligence, Spies and the Secrecy in an Open World, which, by the way, had a foreword from Senator David Boren, the immediate past chairman of the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence, made it quite clear that the national security state is an expensive, ineffective monstrosity that is simply not fit for the purpose. In that sense, the national security state is its own worst enemy and it's bound to fail. Well, yes, especially when you keep building up your enemies like China and Russia and Iran and Israel. You think someone who's onto Israel wouldn't have cottoned on to my stuff when I've got Cynthia McKinney saying I have a body of work to be proud of? He's offsider, and you don't see this? This is straight out of the Soros handbook. See, his criticism of US intelligence excesses are beyond scathing. They are damning. Of course, let's talk about Russia, though. And when we talk about Russia, your friends in Russia. Eh? Let's talk about your friends in Russia. Oh, we're not going to talk about that? No, I didn't think so. We still need spies and secret. We need to redirect the vast majority of the funds now spent on secrecy towards savings and narrowly focused endeavours at home. Of course. Get the US to shrink back into North America, South America. Isn't that right, Robert? David Steele? Yeah, just as Alexander Dugin, the worshipper of Alice Crowley, says in his book, The Fourth Political Theory. Yeah, of course. All right, the whole point of open source is to restore public agency. You can go and read that yourself. You have worked out he is basically a big Soros fan, as is his little friends. I mean, he's there with Cynthia McKinney and Roseanne Barr, for crying out loud. Roseanne, I mean, I used to like Roseanne, plain talking, funny. Yeah, she just sounds like a nut. But if you want to see him, let's watch him now. He has pushed Ryan Dawson and Sean Atwood, two rats of the highest order. Atwood is a pedo, all right? He's a self-admitted pedophile. He's got a thing for young women. He wasn't just dealing ecstasy, it was meth. He was working for a major Mexican cartel, and he does 5 years. Oh, come on. He's a rat. He was over at a big TEDx in St. Gallen in Switzerland, which is a home of intelligence, of all intelligence, home of Soros, with big pyramids in the background. The guy is a stinking low-life fraud. Whitney Webb loved him, went on him countless times. Robert David Steele says he has the finest format ever, and you've got to see it to believe it. So why don't you watch Rats in the Ranks? Let's watch this section right now. Are you ready?
A real long bow and include major ecstasy and meth dealer Sean Atwood into the mix. He was at his peak in the mid-1990s. At the same time, all of this was going on in Las Vegas.
Now, that was his little prostitute friend before, claimed she was sex trafficked. No, she wasn't. He was just out to make a buck. She's a prostitute that he hires on a regular basis. That's what she is.
He was in Phoenix, Arizona, just down the road from perpetual drug addict and Russian-Ukrainian gangster groupie John McAfee. Yeah, that John McAfee.
I'm John McAfee. I'm the guy that was accused of murdering the lead, ran into Guatemala. The FBI is going to be looking for me if you don't call him, sir. The FBI?
Yes, the FBI will be looking for John because he works for the FBI. You really got to watch this. You've got to watch this Rats in the Ranks.
Atwood is now Johnny on the spot with regards Epstein and Maxwell, and had on CIA case officer Robert David Steele not so long ago. You remember Robert and his claim on InfoWars in 2018 that children were being kidnapped and taken to Mars as sex slaves.
This may strike your listeners as way out, but
remember, as Robert said in 2014, we've got to get the intellectual and educational standards up. And expose the child kidnapping rings to Mars, everybody.
We actually believe that there is a colony on Mars that is populated by children who were kidnapped and sent into space on a 20-year ride.
Should have been the end of him. He just got more popular with the morons.
So that once they get to Mars, they have no alternative but to be slaves on the Mars colony.
What a great way to ridicule and drop a turd in the very serious issue of child sex assault and trafficking.
But ladies and gentlemen, why would a Marine NATO psychological warfare bullshit artist say something like that? It's a great mystery. Any ideas, anyone? Well, thank God Susan sent me over there.
But people just seem to accept it and move right along. I mean, this is, after all, the age of army intelligence, psychological warfare, flat earth theories, and Q drops. So we should expect that Robert David Steele would be able to get away with this in the age in which we live. Here is Robert David Steele recently with none other than arch-Israeli First Zionist scumbag Jerome Corsi. Apparently Robert David Steele is exposing the evil Zionist overlord Maxwell and Epstein's sex rings by hanging around with hardcore Israeli First Zionists, perhaps part of his cunning plot. And here is Robert David Steele with none other than Roger Stone. He has since removed the images from his site, but here's Jason Goodman asking Roger Stone if that was a real photo of him with Robert David Steele.
In the world of independent media, I'm here with Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone. Now, Roger, there are people who are spreading fake news, and I certainly don't want to ask you to disparage any of your colleagues, but we all know that you are acquainted with Robert David Steele, and there's a photograph of you with Robert David Steele standing under a portrait of, is it Theodore Roosevelt?
Yes, it's at P.J. Clark's restaurant here in Washington, D.C., and the picture is 100% authentic. We had a very pleasant dinner together, and we talked, global strategy.
Yes, and of course my expertise in digital photography told me that, but I always like to get first-hand information from the source. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your writing and everything that you do.
Confirmed.
Confirmed. Thank you, Roger.
Joining any dots yet? Are you scratching your head?
So, Roger Stone, you remember Roger Stone? The guy that's good friends with General Jim Jones's son who runs Denology. Thank you, Patrick Berge. Gee, so Robert David Steele, Marine, NATO Psych Warfare, Denology, General Jim Jones, Obama. Yeah, come on, you can do it, man. You can do Whitney Webb, George Webb. Daniel Hopsicker exposes Mint Press News, an obvious intelligence front run by an Iranian millionaire with strong links into Rouhani and Zarif and John Kerry. Whitney Webb's dad, a multi-zillionaire corporate lawyer out of Sarasota, Florida. Come on, you can do it. We got Fred Smith, big fan of the TPP, good friends with George W. Bush, John Kerry, Yale, Skull and Bones. Did Whitney Webb's dad, Richard Webb IV, attend Yale for his degree? Is he in Skull and Bones? Are you beginning to make a pattern of the limited hangout controlled release yet? And what was the thing with all these people? Didn't talk about Russia, defended Russia, never put in the Belt and Road. No. McKinder World Island. Oh, Max Kaiser's talking about it now. We've only been talking about it for 4 solid years. It's like someone just snaps their fingers and we're ready to go. Like, okay, and action. Straight out of Wag the Dog. Denology. Look, Patrick Berge gave it to you. Millie Weaver, Gavin Wince gave it to you in Shadowgate. Didn't go as deep as I wanted, obviously, but it was still extremely valuable information. You can link these people together. You should have had the shepherds of the flock onto this in 5 seconds. These clowns would not last 10 seconds in the old internet prior to 2008, 2011. They would have been torn to pieces. They would never have raised their stinking little heads. None of them.
Yeah. Are you going, How is it Robert David Steele has escaped any serious scrutiny this long? One thing I now know, Robert David Steele is 100% CIA case officer and a Navy psychological warfare specialist with deep ties to the United States Marine Corps and NATO. But wait, there's more. He is ghost-written for such infamous sexual...
This is huge. If you know Kay Griggs, remember Kay Griggs gave us the full story over 20 years ago, 1997 with Pastor Strawcutter. 1997 interview, Kay Griggs talks, Griggs, link will below. Link will be below. Think about it. We got it all. The Israelis, the orgies, the sex rings, the child sex, pedophilia, everything. These clowns come in and just trashed it. They trashed it.
Deviant scumbags like General Al Gray, a.k.a. Papa Bear.
We are in the warrior profession. That's what we're all about. The people of our great land demand that we be special. They demand that you and I be part of the premier military organization on this planet.
You think they will be able to call you a Marine in a few...
The Commandant of the United States Marine Corps, they mostly just call him Sir. Not bad for a former enlisted man, not good for anyone in the Corps who doesn't think America's 200,000 Marines should be the best and the brightest. There are those, some current and former Marines, who say they've not been that for some time. Al Gray is out to prove them wrong. If there ever was a man who believed in the axiom, shape up or ship out, it is Papa Bear. The Commandant is General Alfred Gray, Jr.
Bear, by the way, is a slang term for a butch guy. That's why they call him Papa Bear.
Who, as an idealistic 22-year-old from the New Jersey shore, enlisted during the Korean War as a rifleman in the Marine Corps. Since then, he's held virtually every field command a Marine can hold, and has treated his profession as practically a religious calling.
General, I'm told that when you were commissioned as a lieutenant, you made a vow that you wouldn't marry for 30.
We've lost the connection. Well, that was a bit unfortunate. That was a bit unfortunate. And I'm on my special connection too, not the normal one.